District C as a candidate for the Rockford Public District School Board. And the other person running in that district is Ken Scrivano. He was not available tonight, but he did answer the questions in writing. So I will ask a question of Cameron. She will answer that question, and when she's finished, I'll read what Ken Scrivano has written. Eliminate racism does not ever come out in support of candidates. What we try to do is get the word out and give all the candidates an opportunity and it says, please ask the host to give permission to record. I had already done that, but.
Yeah, it says on my end it's recording.
Okay. All right. So Cameron, the first question is, why do you want to be on the board of the Rockford Public Schools?
Okay. So I basically decided to run for RPS 205 school board because I decided I wanted to see a fundamental change in how the board operates. Ever since I've been working with youth for the past 10 years, I've had various different conversations with students and even families, and just asking their opinions about what they know about the school board, and just asking just who represents you. Nobody knows. And I think that that's a huge problem. And it's almost like this board has become a distant organization to the community, which I feel is problematic because they make so many important decisions that impact our children's education. So I want to change that. I want to bring back direct communication to our families. And I also want to encourage more partnerships. I think that RPS 205 needs to work more with community groups that are actually currently supporting the community and doing direct services with youth. So that way we can all work together to increase our children's chances of academic success.
Right. Thank you. And this is the answer that Ken Scrivano gave to that same question. Why would you like to be on the Rockford Public School Board? He said, I'd like to continue to serve my community and the students and staff of RPS 205. I am a longtime resident of Northwest Rockford and attended Rockford Public Schools from kindergarten through 12th grade, as has my spouse, all my siblings, my children, and now my grandchildren. I am an experienced leader and worked over 4 decades as an administrative director at Swedish American Hospital. I have been able to bring those skills. I believe there is still much improvement needed in student growth and achievement, and I'm excited about continuing to work towards solutions with our educational leaders and the community. So that was his answer. I'd like to ask everyone to mute themselves. And also, as we're going along, as you have questions, write your questions down, because at the end of the 5 questions, we'll open it up to everyone for direct questions to Cameron. The second question, what are the 3 most important problems in the Rockford Public Schools you would like to address, and what solutions would you suggest?
Okay, so the 3 biggest problems that I feel exist right now are kind of what I've just said in my introduction, is that there's clearly a poor connection between the families, the staff, and the board members of RPS 205. And another issue is we have a lack of representation, and that's all across the board. That's, again, amongst staff and board and administration. and we don't have enough partnerships. And I think that a solution to increasing the connection, or actually just establishing that, is the board has to put more effort into being actually connected and communicating like with the community. There's several ways to do that. RPS has a very extensive network that you can use for social media. So like the board needs to be more active on social media. That's where families are at now. Also, there's the podcast and things like that. They can be involved with that. In their sub-districts, the schools have their own communication systems. There's PTO meetings. Why aren't the board members popping up at the PTO meetings, showing their faces, talking directly with the families, with the staff, to actually hear firsthand from their mouth what their concerns or what their needs are. Also, there's an opportunity to even attend like some of these parent liaison meetings. Like I've been in attendance to some meetings that they've been having over at Kennedy, and they've been doing this on a regular basis. So these are all simple ways where you can just simply show your face and talk with people, actually listen to them, hear what their concerns are, and that will build more of a rapport, and that can also help hopefully establish some trust too that these families can have in the administration and in the board. And in terms of representation, I mean, we need to be able to see that from the head all the way down. So if our administration for RPS 205 and the board are lacking that, then that is discouraging families, some of the families, I think Black and Brown, from being involved because they don't see themselves in these platforms. Like I've heard firsthand from people's mouths, they're saying that, oh, well, what's the point of speaking up? Like no one cares, they're just gonna do what they wanna do. And it's like, they shouldn't feel that way. They shouldn't feel that their concerns are falling on deaf ears. And I feel like a big part of that is because they don't see themselves in the people that they're trying to voice their concerns to. They feel like they don't understand what it is, the barriers that they're experiencing. And then lastly, as far as the partnerships go, I do know that there has been an effort to elaborate more with other community organizations. This summer, we have some stuff that are coming up. They just announced this at the last board meeting last week, where they were talking about how RPS 205 is going to be working closely with Rockford Park District, as well as the city of Rockford, to bring teachers to different neighborhood centers, which is amazing. I think that these neighborhood centers have worked very hard to create these safe spaces for a lot of Black and Brown students that are missing within the schools. And that's cool for the summer, but that's just going to stabilize things. What about then when the school year comes? And then we go right back to the issues that were already, we were dealing with. So we need to lean more on the organizations like Washington Park Community Center, where I work at, Boys and Girls Club, 815 Alive, KFAC, 100 Strong, the list goes on. We need to be working more closely with these organizations because they obviously are able to stand in these gaps that have been established right now that we're trying to keep from widening within the district.
Thank you. Ken Scarvano's answer to this question was the most significant. Are you hearing feedback? Are you hearing feedback now?
I am hearing it, and it's when you start talking.
Okay, that's. I don't know what to do about that, I guess.
It seems like it's gone away now.
Okay. The most significant issue for many of our students, and this is Ken Scarvano's answer, is early readiness to learn. We must figure out how to find solutions that better prepare our children's school readiness to learn so that the gap when starting school narrows. How can we assist students and families before kindergarten to acquire stronger skills that reduce the distance needed to be ready? The solutions I have supported are expansion of early childhood programs, assisting daycare programs with skill development, and providing support for our families. Secondly, I remain concerned about our graduation rate below where it needs to be. We have improved student engagement through high school academies and connections with the business community, but some students need more support. This can best be achieved by improving methods for teachers and staff to connect with students and develop stronger relationships. Thirdly, the teacher shortages remain a concern. There are several reasons for this, but I'd like us to do a better job of both raising the importance of the role in our society and to find creative ways to encourage our own students to become tomorrow's teachers here. Over time, tuition-free programs like the one we developed with Rockford Promise and the teacher pathway at Rockford University will begin to pay off for the district and our community. So the next question, question number 3, how can RPS address the racial disparity in the teaching staff between African American, Hispanic, and white when compared to the race of students in the Rockford Public Schools? Cameron?
I think that a good starting point to addressing that would be to revisit the goals that RPS 205 established with Eliminate Racism 815. If I'm not mistaken, the first goal was to increase people of color all across the board, especially Black and Latino, by this current school year, 2020-2021. Now, granted, yes, we got hit by a pandemic, so I understand that that could have thrown a monkey wrench in that plan. However, when this meeting was set, and please correct me if I'm wrong, I believe that was August 2019. So we had 6 months before we got shut down, where we should have some type of progress that we can track and see where the efforts were made to increase that recruitment. So, I mean, like, where are we at with that? I think we need to, I mean, it was great that that measure was set, but then where are our action steps at? What effort has truly been put into that? And I think another way too that we can address this is through the curriculum. There needs to be more culturally competent curriculum that is being incorporated, in these lesson plans. I was just on Facebook like last week, and I seen a parent that I was friends with sounding off because her middle schooler wasn't being taught much for Black History Month at her particular school. So when the parent reached out to the teacher and just asked, like, hey, how can we improve this? The teacher said, well, your student should have spoken up about this. And it's just like, well, it shouldn't just lie on the student to raise that concern. This should be something that we're already aware of, we're already planning ahead for. We should be acknowledging actively Black History Month. We should be acknowledging National Hispanic Heritage Month. And we need to be incorporating this history throughout the school year too, not just in these specialized months. So those are my 2 things that I think of how we can address that.
Okay. And Ken Scrivano's answer to the question, and I'll repeat the question, how can RPS address the racial disparity in the teaching staff? He says, I agree there is racial disparity between our teaching staff and students. The teacher shortage has made it even more challenging. We have several incentive programs in place, which I supported to recruit teachers of color, which over time will help. The issue is really a supply and demand issue with not enough supply nationally of teachers of color and high demand. I'm very open to see how we can work together with your group and others to help increase our success in this area. Okay, remember, write your questions down because there'll be time to ask your questions. The question number 4, given the disparities in academic achievement and discipline between white students and Hispanic and Black students, what is the role of the school board to achieve equity for all students. Cameron?
I think that aside from hiring more staff of color, which we know that to be obvious that that's a need, I think that staff need to start being required to participate in some type of ongoing anti-racism and bias trainings. We got to start getting a better understanding of how systemic racism is showing up in our district, and we need to start acknowledging the role that we played in this. And then I think also that administration and the school board need to be mandated to take those same trainings as well. And the board member also needs to become more connected with the schools and families, like I said earlier, in their sub-district, and there needs to be consistent communication. And I think that overall, by doing all of these things, that the board can then start to enforce more policies that will then keep these gaps from further widening.
Okay. Ken has said, I have made this one of the highest priorities for our superintendent to address. This cannot continue, and I know together we can make strides in closing the growth and achievement gaps. It remains critical to me that the focus has to be on better preparing 3- and 4-year-olds to be ready to learn when they start kindergarten. This is why we have committed resources to the Erickson Ready to Learn project efforts through Alignment Rockford. I have directly participated in this project as a school board member and an Alignment Rockford board member. Okay, and now our last question, and then we'll open the meeting up to everyone else's questions. What policies would you suggest to address the lack of African American and Hispanic students in AP and honors classes?
I think that for the Black and Brown students, that we need to start having some type of planning sessions with maybe guidance counselors, so that way they can start having these conversations in middle school about the possibilities of them taking these classes, and they need more encouragement to challenge themselves academically. And I think that if we could have a curriculum that's designed that can be given to 6th through 11th grade, this can help students who are preparing for this type of coursework as well. Just like how we have like SAT prep. Like if we can have something similar to that, that can prepare them for taking these type of classes, AP and honors. And I work with a lot of teens, and including my own. I'm a mother of a 15-year-old son, and I know that they want to take these type of classes. They have that desire, but they feel that it's inaccessible because most counselors are not discussing these options with them. So yeah, I think there needs to be more prep for that, more conversations to prepare them. And also I think that we need to start allotting more funds to these initiatives that can prepare them for taking these classes as well.
And Ken's answer to this, how to increase enrollment of African American Latino students in AP and honors classes. He says, I believe the ability to increase the numbers of students of color in our AP and honors classes will improve as we close the growth and achievement gaps as described earlier in my responses. I would work with our educational administrative leaders to drive this improvement. If our teachers can better connect and develop the relationships with their students, I believe more students will become excited and energized about academic achievement. So that brings us to the close of our prepared questions. If you have a question for Cameron now, would you raise your hand and wave? And I'll need to be able to, there are quite a few people that are on that I can't see you, so you'll need to show your faces here so we can see what your questions are. So
there are questions in the chat, Ann.
questions in the chat. Oh,
Yes, there are
questions
some.
in the chat.
Yeah, and this is Matthew. I put the questions in the chat. I'm happy to ask them in person if you'd rather not have to read them.
Okay, that'd be great. Ask it in person, please.
Sure, thanks. So I want to actually start with the second one I wrote because Ken mentioned the Ready to Learn initiative, Alignment Rockford part, which, as I mentioned, as people were gathering, I'm the co-chair of that team. And so I'd love to hear from you, Cameron, about your thoughts about early childhood and whether the district should continue its commitment to that work. It's a couple $100,000 every 3 years for the Erickson partnership. But wider than that is the focus on preschool for all program and partnerships with the city around Head Start and early intervention, stuff like that. What's your view around early childhood? And then I can ask the levy question after that.
I think that it's important to focus on early childhood, definitely. I do think that there's some logic behind starting early with addressing some of these issues that we're seeing that are coming up as students get to middle school and high school. However, I guess I'm a bit concerned with how the older ones are falling to the wayside though. Like, I think that there needs to be some type of balance, and there needs to be like still some funds and more attention being put towards middle school and high school, because again, they have these desires to still be successful. And I feel like that's falling to the wayside.
Thanks. And then the question I wrote, which I'll just read, is that the board has held the levy flat for many years. The evidence-based funding formula from the state of Illinois should produce additional funding. It's an open question whether that happened this year, but there's an obligation over many years. However, we're struggling, as both you and Ken mentioned, to get enough bus drivers, paraprofessionals, special ed teachers, and other hard-to-fill staff and faculty positions. And my theory is if you can't find somebody for the amount you're offering to pay, then you should pay more. So would you support raising the levy for the first time in many years so that higher compensation could be offered for some of these hard to fill positions and attract more candidates to them?
I definitely feel as though professionals in that arena, the paras, the bus drivers, even nutrition workers, are the heart of our district. I mean, our teachers definitely work very hard. We can't take away from that, but I feel like this group that we're referencing to is like the supporting cast, and they do deserve to have reasonable means so that way they can make a living. So I agree with you that we do need to consider possibly raising that so that way people can get more competitive wages. They deserve it. They work very hard.
Okay, Ron Simmons has a question.
Yeah, I heard you mention guidance counselors when you were responding to one of the answers to the questions. And I'm just wondering if you are aware of the situation with guidance counselors in the Rockford, school district. And do you have any suggestions how we can solve that problem, or how we can make guidance counselors more relevant to students, as you said, in middle school and high school, where they are, we talked about the ratio of students to the number of guidance counselors that we have, and Rockford seems to be in line with that. However, we don't see any success as a result of what's going on. So I just wonder how you feel about guidance counselors, and if there's enough coordination and what ideas you might have that the board could do to try to influence Rockford to do something about the relationship between guidance counselors and students.
Thank you. That's a good question, Mr. Simmons. I guess what I go off of is my personal experience with guidance counselors, just from me being a parent and communicating with them on behalf of my son, but being a mentor as well. Working in youth development, I've had to advocate for a lot of my students. And I think what the issue is that I'm seeing is the lack of, there's no relationship building. Like, I see where the kids have the desire to want to do more. Like I said earlier, they want to seek out these opportunities. I have students asking me about Running Start program, like all types of things that they want to get involved in. But then when they're reaching out to their guidance counselors, they're not being followed up with in a timely manner. Or when they are communicating with them, it's kind of like a brick wall. Like, they don't feel like there's any type of like investment like in their future. And so I think that's where the partnerships can come in handy, because if we establish those more, then some of the community partners can help with standing in that gap. I'm not an educator by no means. I am not a guidance counselor. I commend them for the hard work that they do. However, just being a mentor, I'm able to still guide my students in the right direction with filling out college applications or financial aid, things like that, because I have that relationship that's built. And they listen to me because they know that I'm actually, I care about their well-being. Like I actually, you know, have an ongoing relationship. And I get it that it's hard to do that when you have a huge caseload, when you have a lot of students, but I think we have to start there. That's the start. We have to start building better relationships and leaning on, like I said, our community partners that do have those good relationships with the kids, and we could be working hand in hand, and we can still be helping these students be successful in the long haul.
Actually, Deidre, are you?
I'm here, I'm multitasking.
Okay. Would you mind sharing coming on and sharing the story you shared with us before the meeting actually started? This
Sure.
is Deidre Saltis, who used to work in HR for the Rockford Public Schools and now is in charge of HR in DeKalb.
Good evening, everyone. So I am a class of 92 Auburn High School graduate, very proud Auburn graduate. But that was nearly 30 years ago. And during my time there, I was never a bad student. I did not get straight A's, but I did not get bad grades. So I went to visit my counselor one day, and I asked him to sign my application waiver for a college application for me to attend Augustana, to apply to Augustana College. He told me no, he would not sign it because I would not be admitted to the college and I could not handle that type of rejection. So I guess he didn't think about what that experience would do for me in that moment. So it really tore me down. My sister was a hall monitor at the school. So as I left the guidance counselor's office, I was crying. People told her something happened. Deidre's crying. She came to my class, found me, asked me what happened. I told her. She then went and had a conversation with my guidance counselor. I do not know what that conversation was, but I have my opinions on what it was. But long story short, I got admitted to Augustana. I went there for 4 years, graduated with a double major and a double minor. A few years later, I saw my guidance counselor because his son had gone to Augustana and it was too difficult for him. So he was back home. And he was seeking me out for some assistance because at that time I worked at Rockford College. So he offered me somewhat of an apology at that time and realized that what he said to me was not appropriate. But about, it might be 3 weeks ago now, as Ann said, I work in DeKalb School District. I got a letter from my guidance counselor at my job apologizing for what he did to me in my senior year, saying that he recognized what he thought he was doing to be equitable for all students, he has now learned was not necessarily equity. So again, offered me an apology. However, what I can say is I don't know the purpose of a guidance counselor. I was never invited to the guidance office and asked, what do you want to do when you grow up? Do you want to go to college? Where do you want to go to college? Why do you want to go there? Why do you want that type of career? I have now worked in school districts for 13 years, and I know that there are other kids currently that still don't get those invitations to the guidance counselor's office. They are more concerned with meeting standards and checking a box to make sure they take the PSAT, make sure they sign up for the ACT, whether they're college bound or not, making sure that they're fulfilling obligations for partnerships with Rock Valley College. I'm not knocking that, but every child is not designed to go to community college. Every child is not designed for a four-year college. Some are designed for trade schools, but there should be relationship building to make those determinations so that they can help guide, support, and make a plan with those students. So that's it.
Thank you.
Yep.
I thought that was was a
Thank you.
timely story that she shared.
Thank you
I'd
very much.
also like to recognize Shonda Williams, who is on the Rockford School Board, and she will be, she's running unopposed. So we're not having a candidate forum for her district, which is District A, is that right, Rish?
No, actually, I think you're referring to Ashley Williams, who's running for school board for sub-district G.
Oh, you're right.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'm like, no,
No, you work for the Park District. I'm sorry.
Yes, Rashonda's my coworker at Rockford Park District. Hey,
Yeah.
Rashonda.
but I'm just
Okay,
here as a citizen, just to hear and represent whatever. I just wanted to, when I had a moment to, come on in and hear and support and see what Miss Cameron's gonna do for us to move us forward and be a part of the team in doing so. So thanks for the welcome.
Okay, you're right. I'm sorry. Okay. Next question. Who has a question?
I do.
Okay, Fanny?
I may have missed your background. I know you work for Rockford Park District, and you do, can you hear me? And you do community work there. What do you feel that you have the experience and knowledge and to get all of these things accomplished as a school board member, where you're going to be working with the community, where you're going to be working with the students and so forth, and advocating for change in the Rockford Public Schools because of all the inequities? What do you feel that, do you have any background, say, in with school board members, or do you know specifically what they do? I don't know everything they do, but I know some of the things they do. But how are you going to, say, make wave with the inequities that are going on in the school district now?
All right, thanks for that question, Ms. Owen. So my background consists of, like you said, I do work for Rockford Park District. I'm a recreation coordinator at Washington Park Community Center. So I oversee our youth and teen programs, and I also oversee our teen leadership program. And prior to Rockford Park District, I was at YMCA, where I was a youth and family director. So I did programming for youth ages 0 to 12. And simultaneously, when I was at the Y, and for a little bit while I was at Rockford Park District, I worked for KFAT, the local mentoring program. So I started out as a volunteer, but then as the organization gained more funding, I was able to work part-time. So I was a mentor specialist with that organization, and I had a case list of at least 25 high school girls that I worked very closely with, helping them with college career readiness. And I also, with KFAT, oversaw the community service projects. Every month we did community service in the community. And I also organized enrichment activities, so that way they could get career exposure and interact with different professionals throughout the community so they can see and get an idea for the different things that they could do. So before all of that, I was just a volunteer doing different things as a mother. My son has been at RPS 205 almost his entire education. He's a sophomore at Auburn. So I've volunteered at schools before. I've done teen mom things in sports capacities. Like, I've worked with kids, as I mentioned earlier, at least for the last 10 years. So that's my experience that I bring to the table. And with it being current right now, I think that that's an advantage because it shows that I clearly have stake in the game, right? So I'm making the best decisions, not only for my children, but for everybody else's too, for your children, for your grandchildren, your nieces, your nephews, whatever the case may be. And working with these populations and working for these organizations, you can't help but be an advocate. I hate the labels of at risk and under-resourced, things like that, but technically they do fit into those categories. So I understand a lot of the barriers because I see it up front of what they're faced with. So I have no problem speaking up to that and speaking to that effect and on their behalf at these board meetings. I have not met any current board members aside from Denise Pearson. I did just connect with her recently, and she's a new member as well. But I watch the board meetings. They're available on YouTube, so that way I am abreast and I'm knowing what's going on. I'm having somewhat of an idea of what I'm talking about. So I think that I bring a fresh perspective. I am current. I am a young leader. Like, I think that that's necessary too. I mean, I'm not trying to take away from the tenure that everybody else has and what they've brought to the board currently. That's a huge responsibility. And I tip my hat off and I commend them for their hard work. But if I'm keeping it honest, Miss Fanny, I feel that it's time to pass that baton on to the younger leaders now, the next generation who have the stamina to run that next leg of the race and to truly continue to fight this race. These issues of inequities that we're seeing. I hope that answers your question.
It did, but one other question you mentioned is early education, and I think that's what you say that's very key to any child, because if you don't know a lot of stuff, I mean, if your parents haven't taught you a lot of stuff prior to, say, entering kindergarten or first grade, what do you feel are the downsides of that? Because a lot of say you can't go to children development center and because if it's been, targeted that your child has delays and so forth. And I think a lot of people who are single parents who work every day perhaps don't have those assessments that are needed to ensure that their child is functioning at a kindergarten level or so forth. I just think that, and I think you mentioned that, and that was very important, that early education does matter.
Yeah, I'm not denying that at all.
Okay, Ron?
Yeah, I just have one more question that I want to ask. I just heard what your resume was and what you've done, and what you've done in the past and what you're doing now. My question is, did you grow up in Rockford, and are you aware of what happens in Rockford? And I say that because I support you 100%. I think it is time to pass the baton. I think it is time for new people to step on board, younger people to fight this race. However, I think that, we kind of need to know what the history has been with the Rockford School District, what it's been with the board, and that when you step onto the board, even though you have this desire to make these changes and to do these things for the students, you're dealing with a systemic racism type of group where you're going to be the minority. And so I'm just wondering if you've been part of Rockford and you know the story of the fight that Rockford has, or if you're new on the scene and ready to fight again and be worn down. That's my question.
Yeah, I'm somewhat aware of the struggles that existed in the past that are still taking place to this day. And that doesn't discourage me though. If I allow that to deter me, then I would be a part of the problem by still feeding into, the things that we're constantly complaining about. So I want to be aware of what I'm up against. I want to do my research, yes, but I don't want to focus too much on that either. So, I feel like we still need to try to fight. We still need to speak up. We don't have to allow what happened in the past to determine where we're going in the future, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you for that response.
No problem.
Okay, there are several people that haven't had a chance to ask a question. Mandy, do you have a question?
No, some of the questions I'd prepared ahead of time, Cameron has actually already answered. So yes, at this moment, I don't. Thank you very much for hosting this forum. I certainly appreciate it as a parent. I know that you mentioned, for example, PTOs. My children go to Westview. I'm the PTO president at Westview. I've RPS 205, kindergarten through 12th grade for myself. So yeah, I'm really excited to have a candidate who, has many fresh ideas and lots of inclusiveness and connections. I agree. It's something that we desperately need. So thank you so much. And everyone who spent time hosting this event.
Thank you, Mandy. Deidre?
I'd just like to interject and say, because I have worked at RPS, that I'm happy to see the number of minority candidates that there are. What often happens with the school board is if there's a minority candidate, there's one, and that becomes the minority school board member. So it's no longer about what sub-district you represent or what area you live in. They go to that person because of that comfort level, and that's unfair to our community. should be heard, race, ethnic, or they're different breed. So I'm excited the outcome of this, so that board member that they elected based on where they live.
Tanya, do you have a question? Tanya, are you?
Nope,
Okay.
I don't have any question.
Okay. Rashonda Williams, do you have a question? I think she might have stepped away. David Rundle, do you have a question?
Yes, I do. I actually have two. The first one is about, we know that the district has as the United States have a problem of hiring minority teachers, but also the Rockford district has a trouble with retaining District 205 teachers of minorities. So my question to you is, how would you solve that, or what are your thoughts on trying to improve the retention, not as far as that goes, not just the hiring?
That is something that I don't have the answer to, because I feel that that's something that I do need to research more on, the retainment. But I think that the sessions that have been started that are being held with the Black teachers can be a good starting point of asking, like, what are some of the inequities that they're running into, and they can be given feedback in that area in terms of what would it take in order to keep more teachers of color on board. And I think that not only taking that feedback will be helpful, but again, we have to have action steps. Like, people are getting burnt out on all these conversations, not that they're not needed, but it has to be some action matched along with it. So I think that taking feedback and starting there could be a good starting point, and really getting a better system set up for teachers of color once they come on board here.
You had another question, David?
Yes, and my second question would be, the school to prison pipeline is a very problem in the nationwide and in Rockford, and there's an abundance number of problems with the discipline code, I believe, in Rockford. What would you do to help bring more of a keeping students in classrooms in the Rockford School District, instead of having EIAs, which are basically expulling a kid out of school, basically, because they can't be at any school function or be in the school. And it seems like there's abundance of those. And how would you improve the district as far as those go?
That's a really good point, David. Thanks for asking that. I think that starting those trainings, like how I mentioned earlier, like just having those open trainings that are having the discussions about systemic racism, and doing the anti-racism and bias trainings is a step to, like, us all educating ourselves on how this this pipeline to prisons exists, like how you said. And then I think that also we need to provide some more social emotional resources as well, because a lot of students that are acting out or that are having these behavioral issues is stemming from something deeper. They're not just being disruptive because they want to be. There's things that are happening at home that we don't know about, or we're not caring enough to ask about. So I know that we do have social workers that are already enlisted at these schools, but I think if we're offering like free therapy or like support groups, like that can help with trying to get to the root of where these behavioral issues are coming from. So that way we can be more empathetic, and we can actually be working with them more with keeping them inside of school instead of kicking them out, because nobody wins when they're kicked out.
That's for sure.
Thank you.
Kathy Madison,
No,
you have a question?
no, I don't.
Okay. Rashonda, did you have a question?
No, I don't.
Okay.
Thank you.
Steve DeLapp?
I do not have a question. I'm happy to see Cameron running.
there's one thing that you mentioned long ago, Ann, that I haven't heard brought up. We're trying to move the middle now, and you as an elementary school teacher have been able to identify what you call your frequent flyers. And I think we need to start concentrating on children that are having problems in elementary school.
Good point. And what I learned as an elementary school principal was every kindergarten teacher could identify within the first month probably what students in the kindergarten class are really going to need extra support and extra attention. And if we were just focused on getting that support to students early on, it might eliminate a lot of the problems later on. Just another solution to really think about. Let's see, who else has not, Faye Marcus.
Okay, I'm not in this district, but I'm glad to see you running, Cameron. One of the things that, and Ann knows, I've worked in schools as a school social worker, influencer worker. One of the things that I really feel that our district needs is to be part of the trauma-infused network of schools, where all the school district is learning how to help students with problems, how to talk to them and how to find out from them what are the issues associated, not, as you said, throwing them out of school or throwing them out of their classrooms, but finding out what they can do to support these students. And I think that they will be very, very important in the schools, starting from pre-kindergarten on up, actually, because we have a lot of children that come to schools who have faced a lot of trauma, and that affects how they act.
Let's see, Francie Barnes.
Yeah, I have no questions. Thank you, though. It's been interesting.
Okay, good. Jeff Bailey. Any questions from Jeff? Not now. Okay, anybody else have any questions that they'd like to ask Cameron before we close out here? No burning questions. Cameron, would you like to make some closing comments?
Sure. I just want to say a huge thank you to Eliminate Racism A15 for giving me this opportunity to talk about my platform and to share my campaign with the community, with my sub-district. Everybody who took time out of your hectic schedule to log on tonight to learn more about me and to ask these very well thought out questions, I appreciate you as well. I hope that if you're in my sub-district that I've earned your vote, and even if you're not in my sub-district, you can still support me. Follow me on Facebook. My campaign page is Vote for Cameron. You can help spread and share my posts. You can donate. Printing materials is not cheap when you're trying to campaign. And yeah, I just want to say thank you again to everybody for logging on tonight and for conversing with me. This has been a great experience.
All right, and I'd like to echo thank you everyone for coming. There's nothing more important than the education that our children are getting in our community. And for that, I mean educating all of the students in the Rockford Public Schools. It's a big job, it's an important job, and it's going to take every one of us to do our part. And I thank Cameron and Ken Scrivano for time that they're putting into this. It's being a school board member is not an easy job. I thank you for being willing to step up. And with that, I'd like to say good night. Everybody have a good rest of your evening.
Great job, Cameron. The little boy
Thank
I
you.
saw late.
No, thank you, Rashonda.
I'll call you tomorrow too.
Okay.
Okay, talk to you later. Bye-bye.
All right, bye.
Bye, everybody.
Good night, y'all.
Good night.
Good night.